Welcome to Politics for Patriots. Here's your host, the eviscerator of progressive nonsense, the executioner of imbecility, and the grim reaper of BS, Eddie Zipper.
The Democrats have blue wave fever again this week. It's an epidemic. But today, I'm going to spread a little electoral Germ-X so that nobody in this audience comes down with it. All right, thanks for listening today. I cannot believe how fast the audience for this show is growing. My humble thanks to all of you for that. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. Now, to celebrate, let's eviscerate some imbecilic talking points that are currently surging through the mainstream media. All right, with 0% of precincts reporting, Democrats in the mainstream media are ready to call the special election in Ohio's 12th district for the Democrat Danny O'Connor. Why? A new poll came out that showed the Republican Balderson with only a 1-point lead. And Democrats are ecstatic about this poll. I watched New Day this morning, and that was all they were talking about on CNN. Oh, this poll, the blue wave is back. And, they had all their McPundits come on and talk about, if this is right, it's bad news for Republicans. Clearly everyone hates Trump, and everyone is going to vote for Democrats from now on. Vox, if you don't know what Vox is, it's a liberal website. Vox says, so far, polling has the race in a dead heat. Right? Vox says, Democrat Danny O'Connor trails Republican Troy Balderson by just 1 point, 43% to 44%, according to a new Monmouth University poll. In June, Balderson had a 10-point lead, 43% to O'Connor's 33% in a survey from the same firm. Okay, so it's like an exciting football play-by-play. We're watching the game here, and the lead is tightened. All right, and this is all kinds of media reporting these same things like it's a football game. From Cleveland.com, Troy Balderson's lead narrows in 12th congressional district race. CNN, new poll shows tight race. From Roll Call, 12th district race tightens. From Politico, Balderson, O'Connor in dead heat in Ohio special election. All right. So you see how they pretend it's like a football game and the polls are the scoreboard, right? So what's going to happen in the election has changed. If they'd have held the election a month ago or back in June, then definitely the Republicans would have won by 10 points because that's what the poll said. But now the race is tightened. Now it's a dead heat. Okay, my generous analysis here is that the media is lazy and doesn't understand polling data at all. And as a result, they overreact to what the polls say, what one individual poll says. My skeptical analysis, and this is probably the actual situation, my skeptical analysis is that the media uses ridiculous hyperbole and makes polls sound way more important than they actually are because the media wants to motivate Democrat voters. Hint, it's the second one. All right, the media deeply believes that they should be the great deciders. They deeply believe that they are super smart, and that's why every time there's an election, they run their little voter enthusiasm campaign to try to get Democrats amped up and out to the polls. That is what is going on here. If you get the Democrats excited, you can get them to the polls. That's what the media believes. All right, so that's why they create this phony, totally fake hype that the race has tightened, that the polls are a scoreboard, and suddenly now it's a tie game. All right, do not worry. Nobody's lead has narrowed. The race is not tightened, and I doubt it's a dead heat. That is not how polls work. I spent a lot of time writing about this during the 2016 election. I spent a lot of time explaining that the media should calm down about the polls. If you get a chance, I wrote a piece in LifeZet called "The Media Should Calm Down About the Polls." In that piece, I explained why the media was overreacting to the pro-Hillary polls. Right? The polls that were showing Hillary with these gigantic leads. I explained why the data journalists should not be drawing their blue maps and saying, oh, the whole country is going to go blue. Every single state is going to be a blue state. Everybody in America is voting for Hillary Clinton. Right? They think it's going to be, like Peter Strzok's forecast, 100 million to 0. It's going to be a huge landslide for Hillary Clinton. At that time, I explained why they were using the polls wrong, and I was right. We can see in retrospect that I was correct, that they were not using the polls correctly, that they were not understanding the polls correctly, that the data journalism had gone into crazy hyperbole mode. I was right about all that. See, this is the media's problem, and it's just one of many reasons that they are ridiculous, and they are embarrassing themselves. See, in June, a Monmouth poll had Balderson up by 9 in the Ohio special election race. The new Monmouth poll has Balderson up by only 1. So in the minds of the McPundits, and I call them, if you don't listen to the show all the time, I call them McPundits because they serve up political analysis that is low quality but hot and fast. So, over 1 billion hot takes served on CNN alone. So in the minds of the McPundits, polls are a scoreboard. So you just look up at the scoreboard and you can see that O'Connor scored another touchdown, kicked the extra point, and now a field goal will win it for him. And the media and Democrats think if they make their last second push for O'Connor, that will be the field goal he needs to win the game. That's not how it works. Every time the media does this, I feel like the old lady on that Geico commercial. You know the one I'm talking about?
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
I feel her pain. That's exactly how I feel every time the mainstream media gets super excited about one poll. So the Geico lady is right. That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. Polls are not a scoreboard. The new Monmouth poll looks different from the old Monmouth poll because they sampled entirely different people. This Monmouth poll in Ohio's 12th surveys about 500 likely voters. And the margin of error on the poll is about 5% at the 95% confidence level. So what does all that mean? It means that if they did this Monmouth poll 100 times, they would expect to get the same results within 5 percentage points 95% of the time. Which means the exact results they got, Balderson 44, O'Connor 43, are totally meaningless because of the margin of error. If they repeated the survey, they wouldn't expect to get the exact same results 95% of the time. That wouldn't happen. They would not get the exact same results 95% of the time. But they would get supposedly within the level of confidence 95% of the time. Or the level of, within the margin of error 95% of the time, because 95% is the level of confidence. So, they might get Balderson 49, O'Connor 38, and it would still fit within their confidence level. They could get O'Connor 48 and Balderson 39, and that would still fit within their confidence level. That's a humongous point swing. Do you see how big that swing is? So it could be Balderson winning by 11, or it could be O'Connor winning by 9, and all of that would fit within their margin of error. So It's almost either guy could be up by double digits, right? That's the way that polls really work. So I'm not dissing the Monmouth poll. I'm about to diss the Monmouth poll, but that's a totally different thing. But I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying that that's how polls work. 95% of the time, they'll get within that giant margin. Okay, so the one result that they got is basically essentially meaningless. It certainly is not any sort of scoreboard. All right, so just to give you an idea of that, let's take a look at a few Monmouth polls, right? Let's take a look at the recent polling history of Monmouth. And let's go ahead and stay in Ohio. But fire up your flux capacitor because we're taking a trip back to 2016. Let's take a look at some of the polling Monmouth did at the state level in 2016. Monmouth's final election poll in Ohio had Clinton beating Trump in Ohio by 2 points. In reality, Trump won Ohio by 8 points. So they were 10 points off. But, big fat but, their poll was not wrong. Why not? Because it had a margin of error of 5 points, which means that Trump plus 8, the actual final results, still fit within their 95% confidence level. It was within the margin of error. Just barely, but it was within the margin of error. So they missed that one by 10 points. Let's look at Wisconsin. The final Monmouth poll in Wisconsin had Clinton winning by 7. Reality, Trump won by 1. The poll wasn't wrong, though. It had a margin of error of 5. So this result still fit within their 95% confidence level. So you can say, yeah, the Monmouth poll was 8 points off in Wisconsin, but it was right. So, that seems confusing because the media so often present polls as being like a scoreboard when they're way off. I mean, you wouldn't even watch football if it was like, oh, well, the Falcons are winning by 2 touchdowns, but really the Patriots might be up by 1 touchdown. You just don't really know. I mean, how fun would it be to watch football? I mean, that would be ridiculous. That's what polls are like. If you're using them as a scoreboard, then you are not using them correctly at all. Let's look at some more Monmouth polls. This is fun. Let's see. Final Monmouth poll in Pennsylvania had Clinton plus 4. Final result in Pennsylvania, Trump plus 1. They still weren't wrong. Margin of error was 5, so the results still fit well within the margin of error and their 95% level of confidence. Recent special election in Pennsylvania's 18th. Just in case you think that, oh, well, maybe Monmouth is a super good pollster and they just have a Trump problem. Recent special election in Pennsylvania's 18th. Connor Lamb won by 2. The final Monmouth poll had Lamb winning by 6. So that poll was 4 points off, but it was still correct because the result fit within the margin of error. Monmouth's final poll in Florida had Clinton plus 5. Trump won by 1. Monmouth's final Arizona poll had Trump plus 1. He won by almost 4. Final Monmouth poll in Nevada had Clinton plus 7. The final there was Clinton plus 2. Final Monmouth poll in North Carolina had Clinton plus 1. Trump won that by 4. Final Monmouth poll in Indiana had Trump plus 11. Trump won that by 19. Still within the margin of error, though. Final Monmouth in Colorado had Clinton plus 11. She won that state by 5. Final Monmouth in Iowa. And hey, Monmouth did a really good job on this one. They had Trump plus 9. Trump only won it by 10. But do you notice a pattern with all this Monmouth polling? All those swing states I went through, the special election, and I didn't list Michigan because I don't think they even did a poll in Michigan. All those swing states I went through, that special election, They were all within the margin of error, yes. But every single one had Democrats doing better than they actually did, including the Pennsylvania special election. So, if you did a study on this, and I don't have that kind of time, but if you did, the odds that they would be running a good poll, and it would, in all these instances, every single time, benefit the Democrats, not going to happen. All right? Something about their polling, and I don't think they're doing it on purpose. Okay? Monmouth is running a scientific poll, and I don't think they're doing it on purpose, but I'm sorry to say that they are getting a skewed sample every time, skewed towards Democrats. I don't know the answer to why. Obviously, if they knew the answer to why, presumably they would fix it. But you're not going to, if these were good results, you'd be seeing that, sometimes they're right on the side of the Democrat, or sometimes they're wrong on the side of the Democrat, sometimes they're wrong on the side of the Republican. Not happening here. Monmouth is wrong on the side of the Democrats every single time. This is not a good poll. They need to take a look at their methodology and fix it. All right, so nationwide in the final Monmouth poll, they had Clinton up 6. The final result was Clinton by 2. The margin of error on that poll was 3.7. It had a bigger sample size. So they were quote unquote right again. But guess who did a better job calling the nationwide election totals through their polls? CBS News, Rasmussen, Reuters, NBC Wall Street Journal, Gravis, Fox News, ABC Washington Post, Economist YouGov, and Bloomberg. They were all closer than Monmouth to getting it right in their final poll before the 2016 election. Am I saying that Balderson will definitely win without a doubt? No. In fact, I think Balderson is facing a lot of challenges. I also think Balderson hasn't run necessarily a fantastic campaign. I guarantee you, most of the McPundits in the mainstream media have no clue who Balderson and O'Connor are or what kind of campaigns they're running. All the McPundits know is that one guy has an R by his name and the other guy has a D by his name. So if the guy with the D by his name wins, it's a huge victory for Democrats everywhere. Okay? In their McNalysis, it means everybody hates Trump and Democrats will win all the seats in the November election. If the guy with the R by his name wins by 5 or 6 points, it means a huge victory for Democrats, that everybody hates Trump, and that Democrats are going to win all the seats in November. If Balderson somehow wins in a landslide, it will mean that special elections aren't representative of what's going to happen in November. And on that one, they'll accidentally be right. Because special elections are never, ever, ever representative of what will happen on Election Day. Take that to the bank. Special elections are never, ever representative of what will happen on Election Day. Just through the benefit of them being special tells you that they are special and not representative. Right? There's a reason they're not called representative elections. They are special elections. All right. So whether they look good for Republicans or look good for Democrats, they're special elections and they're unrepresentative of what will happen on a big non-special election day. So who are these two guys? First, the Republican Balderson. He says he's a Trump guy and he supports the wall. He also supports a path to citizenship for Dreamers. The Democrat is running a pretty moderate Democrat campaign. He's not as moderate as Connor Lamb ran in that Pennsylvania special election district, but this is not a ban all guns, abolish ICE type. This is not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez running for this seat in Ohio. This is a pretty moderate Democrat. Now, Balderson has a couple of things that may hurt him in this upcoming election. Balderson is the Republican. He's trying to play both sides of Trump. He's trying to be a Trump guy and also a Paul Ryan / John Kasich guy at the same time. Now, I don't know how that will play out for him. Sometimes an effort to enthuse both sides results in not enthusing either side. Man, and if you're a Republican, you have seen that so much, right? The candidate who comes out and they're going to enthuse both sides by bringing everyone together. Like, there is no more sure way to crash and burn than to be the guy who plays both sides. You know, you think it's going to make everybody like you, but always it makes everybody dislike you. I mean, I don't know how they don't catch on to this stuff, but I mean, it's clear that that's what happens often, and that's a little bit what Balderson is doing. I don't know how that'll play for him. This certainly looks like it's a more Kasich-y district than a Trump district. Balderson said in the debate that he opposes Trump's tariffs. The Rust Belt and Northeast are generally where those tariffs are more popular than in the rest of the country, right? That's where those dying industries are benefiting from President Trump's trade policies, right? In the 2016 election, Trump was anti-trade deals that don't actually represent free trade, right? He said he wants to get better trade deals, and that was a big thing, all right? Trump was against letting China flood the market with cheap steel, all those things. You remember all that? That was why Trump won those Rust Belt states and surprised all the Democratic, all the Democrats, all the media at the time were all shocked. I was not shocked. I had said that that was going to happen because of Trump's trade policies. Balderson is a little bit different. He's a free trade guy, and Ohio as a whole is not the best place to be running as a, free trade Republican. Now, I want to not mess up the nuance here because Trump believes in free trade too, but I'm talking about the free trade Republicans who pretend that our trade deals that we make are free trade, which they are not. If they were free trade deals, they would be, one sentence long. They're not one sentence long. They're 1,000 pages long. So they're not free trade deals. But there is a faction of Republicans who wants to conflate, these issues and say, oh yeah, if you're against these specific deals that we already have or that we were working on, NAFTA, TPP, if you're against those, then you're against free trade. And that is actually not the case. So O'Connor, the Democrat here, aligned himself a little bit more with Trump on the trade issue than Balderson did. And that fact could hurt Balderson. He should have run more on the idea. Well, I'm not going to say he should have because I don't know who he's after. He's after both the Trump Republicans and the Kasich-type Republicans. But it's possible he should have run more on the idea that we need better trade deals and tough negotiations are a part of achieving that. Instead, he ceded that territory to O'Connor. And that might have been a mistake. It depends on which Republicans he's pushing to turn out and which ones he wants to box in. Because that's what you have to do when the party is split. You've got to enthuse one group of the party and you have to box in the other group. Right? That's the idea with, if you have Mitt Romney, he's going to enthuse moderate Republicans, theoretically, and he's going to box in conservatives because while he might not be conservative enough for them, Barack Obama is certainly not conservative enough for them, so they're boxed into Romney. So that's what you do. You go after one part of the party and you box in the other part of the party. Trying to play both sides is a little bit different and not as good a strategy. So anyway, that stance could have hurt Balderson because he ceded that territory to O'Connor. Balderson also is for entitlement reform. The idea behind it is raising the ages for Medicare and Social Security because mandatory spending is out of control and is eventually going to spin us into oblivion. And let me first say, Balderson is dead right about that. If you take a look at our spending on a pie chart, it's like 65% mandatory. All right, on a pie chart. Mandatory spending, that's Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and interest on the national debt I include in that. The mandatory spending looks on the pie chart like a giant Pac-Man gobbling up the actual government. Alright, that's the sound of our mandatory spending gobbling up our discretionary spending, and that is what is happening at a very alarming rate. Now, people want to cut spending all the time, right? Cut the Department of Education, cut the Department of whatever. But the secret is, none of that matters. It doesn't matter if you cut the entire Department of Education or the entire Department of Housing and Urban Development. It doesn't matter because our mandatory spending grows so fast that you could cut our entire government, and that would still only buy us a little time. In the end, the Pac-Man of mandatory spending is going to do this. And if you grew up with an Atari, you know what that sound is. And that's where mandatory spending is headed. And I know what you might be thinking, and I understand why this whole concept upsets people, because you're like, hey, I paid into that. I'm getting it. And that's right. That's how it should be. You did pay into it. And so did I. And so did everybody else who works. We paid into it. And so we are entitled to get it back. That's how Social Security works. That's how these programs work. But the problem is they're paying way more out than actually gets paid in. You know what that is called? That is called a Ponzi scheme. It is literally the exact same thing Bernie Madoff did to his investors, right? You take a bunch of money from investors, you pretend that it paid off, and you give more money back, but eventually you run out of money. The difference here is nobody was forced by the government to invest with Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff could have kept his Ponzi scheme going for a way longer time if people had been forced by the government to invest in his Ponzi scheme. It would still be going on with nobody knowing. That's what Social Security is. Because they don't grow the money. They don't turn the money into new money. Right? So you invest and get more back. That doesn't work unless you grow the money. So, but because people paid in and are actually entitled to get that money back, people get upset about Social Security reform. Okay, so Balderson took this stance, and he is right. I totally agree with it. But it doesn't matter. It could still hurt him. Lots of people, especially seniors, don't want to hear about Social Security reform, period. You say the words, and you're through. All right, you're throwing grandma off the cliff. Remember that asinine commercial where Paul Ryan pushes the old lady off the cliff? They use those scare tactics for a reason because they work. So again, it is possible that this could hurt or it could help, depending on which voters he wants to enthuse. All right, Trump certainly didn't run on mandatory spending reform. He told people over and over that he would not touch the mandatory spending. If he hadn't done that, he probably would not be president because he would have lost Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and probably Florida, right? He probably would have still had a narrow win in Ohio. So I'm for mandatory spending reform, but in the Northeast, I think that it can really hurt a candidate like Balderson. All right, also, Balderson is not an incumbent. I won't list them all, but the advantages of incumbency in a district level race are many. All right, name recognition, fundraising, media access, franking privilege. Not a lot of people know about this one, but what is franking privilege? Incumbents actually get to mail their constituents for free. That's one of the benefits of being in Congress. It allows members of Congress to save millions of dollars on stamps and communicate with their constituents for free. Here's a quick historical aside. Early in his political career, Abraham Lincoln was a local postmaster, which gave him the franking privilege, right? He could just sign his name in lieu of a stamp and mail things for free. And he completely abused that power. He used to frank mail for everyone who came in and asked him, "Oh, hey, will you frank this for me?" "Sure, no problem." I personally hate the franking privilege. I think Congress or members of Congress should use their campaign money to pay for what is obviously campaign mail, not taxpayer money. But that's another show for another day. But next time you get something in the mail from your representative, take a look at the postmark and you'll see their signature instead of a stamp. That mail is franked. It was sent to hundreds of thousands of people for free. And free communication in an election, freely communicating with the voters, is a great big advantage. All right, so Tiberi, who was the incumbent, or would have been the incumbent, I think he's running for governor now. So he's stepped up to a higher office, and that's why this seat is vacated. He's been winning this district by 30 points for quite some time. Sean Trende, who's a data guy for Real Clear Politics that I really respect and trust, and believe me, there are not a lot of data journalists that I really respect and trust, but Sean Trende, David Byler are two just off the top of my head. So Sean Trende points out in a Real Clear Politics piece, this is a really good piece, you should read it. Just search, do a Google search, Sean Trende, Ohio special election, and this piece will come up. So he points out in this piece that on the presidential level, Republicans used to win by way more than they have in recent years, and that's true. But it hasn't affected Tiberi. I guess that's it. I've never heard the name out loud. I've only read it, so sorry if I got it wrong. It hasn't affected his seat. He's been winning it by more and more as years went on. So one trend is going to be wrong in this election, and we'll have to wait and see which one it is. According to the polling data, it looks like it's going to be the Tiberi going up and up trend that's going to be broken, but we'll wait and see because, the poll that shows it close is the Monmouth poll, and I think I pretty much blew that one out of the water. So I think Balderson is going to win this election. If he loses, it will certainly be the first time I've seen a Monmouth poll overestimate a Republican in recent memory for the last few years. All right, smart bet is that the Monmouth poll is overestimating O'Connor. I read you. Every single swing state, Monmouth overestimated Democrats. The special election in Pennsylvania, Monmouth overestimated Democrats. The nationwide vote, Clinton versus Trump, they overestimated Clinton. So Monmouth, there's something wrong with the Monmouth methodology. It skews the poll towards Democrats. Maybe they'll look at it and fix it. That's what I would do if it was my polling company, but it's not, so they can do whatever they want. So, I think that's the safe bet, is that they're overestimating the Democrat. My official prediction is Balderson will win with a narrower victory than he really ought to have. I think he'll win by 8 or 9 points, even though the Monmouth says 1 point. I think he'll win by 8 or 9. And I'm going to give my Magic 8 Ball a shot at this one, too, to see if it can beat the McPundits. Magic 8 Ball. Will Balderson win the special election in Ohio on Tuesday? All right, I'm shaking it. Very doubtful. Okay, so I guess it's me against the McPundits and the Magic 8 Ball this week. if I'm wrong, I'll just say, well, man, I should have listened to the Magic 8 Ball. Because if the McPundits are right, it'll be by accident anyway. So, anyway, if you enjoyed the show, shoot me an email, patriots@eddiezipperer.com. That's patriots@EDDIEZIPPERER.com. Tell your friends about the show. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook @EddieZipperer. And subscribe on iTunes, please. Leave a review on iTunes. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. I'm out of here.
You just listened to Politics for Patriots with Eddie Zipper. Email the show at patriots@eddiezipper.com. And please subscribe.